This video is going to be the faded loop, where we're going to be fading the steam from this cup along with the water being poured into one continuous faded loop. One thing that you can do to make your timeline a little bit more obvious or stand out as you're working is zoom in on it. So this little button at the bottom of the screen here, you can zoom in to make that timeline a lot larger. I would just make it still fit your screen so you can see where you're working. Now we need to figure out where the video is going to start and where the video is going to stop, so where we want our loop to be. A good starting point is going to be where the water is being poured into the cup here, but at kind of a steady spot. So not where the water just starts to pour where you can only see a little bit at the top, but you want to slide that over to where it starts to be a consistent stream. So you can see right here that's a consistent pour of the water there that stays in, for the most part, the same spot. So I'm going to go to kind of right where that starts, so right about here. And then for this to work, you do have to crop your image. So that's very important to crop the end of your image off, or the start of the image, all the way to where that red line is. So you can see where we have that one spot saved. So now if I go back to the start of my image here and press my space bar, it's going to start playing right where that little bit of water is poured. So now we need to find where to end the video here. And one thing that works really well is using guides. So if you don't have a ruler set out on your computer yet, go to View and then down to Rulers and just check that off. That way you're able to click on the ruler and drag out a guide so you can line up where your water starts so that it kind of meets that same spot when the water stops, because we want to do a continuous loop with the water here. So to find out where to end my video, I'm going to click on this, just kind of drag it along until I see a spot where that water lines back up, like about here, that looks just like where it started. So you can see that with the guide, the bottom of the water starts right in the middle of my guide, and the top of the water being poured starts off to the left a little bit of that guide. So I'm just sliding this over, trying to get the water to line right back up. So about there is where the bottom meets this line of the guide, and the top part of the water is a little bit off to the left side. So now I'm going to take the right side of my timeline here and just crop it all the way off to where I have my red line. And now that it's cropped, I'm able to go ahead and actually let me take a little bit more off the back side there. But now I can hit my space bar and it will play in a continuous loop. So right now, looking at this, it's not too bad, but you can see a little bit of a jump right at the kind of end where that water splits into the next playback. So what I'm going to do is just slide this a little bit more over to the right to bring back some of my timeline, and just make sure that that ending lines up a little bit better is the first thing that you can do. So I'm sliding that over a little bit more, and now it looks like that's going to line up a little bit better. So I'll play that, and as you see that playback, it looks a little bit more continuous with where the water lines up. So even though this lines up for the most part, and as I'm playing it you can see a little bit of that timeline here, the smoke in the background still does jump a bit, and the water still has a little bit of a jump, so it's not completely seamless. And what we want with these cinemagraphs is a very seamless flow with the playback so that you don't notice that little bit of a jump. So what we're going to do is duplicate this layer and have it fade so that the start of the image and the end of the video repeat and line up with each other. So you'll see what I mean. Just make sure that you're following each of the steps that we're about to go through here. So the first thing is duplicating the layer. So I'm going to click on my picture over here to bring up my layers panel, and then I'm going to select the video group 1. And I'm going to click and drag that over the add new layer, so it's going to duplicate my layer. So now you'll notice that I have in my timeline the two identical layers right on top of each other here. So now I'm going to take my second layer and I'm going to drag that over in the timeline so that it lines up right with the end of the video. So this part here of the video is the start, and this is the start as well, so these two are going to line up. The next thing with the timeline here is to click and drag the second video and expand that a little bit. So I'm expanding that so there's some overlap here. Now that's different from clicking and dragging on the entire video. You don't want to do that. You just want to extend the end of the clip. So you'll line up where that little black arrow comes up and click and drag that over. So now at the top of the layers panel here, I'm going to click on this button that's right next to the scissors, so to the right of it. And I'm going to click on where it says fade and drag that to my top layer. So clicking and dragging that to the second half of my top layer, and then I'm going to let go. So if I bring this timeline over here and hit play, you'll see that the video starts to fade out. So right here the video fades. However, since this video does not line up, the second video doesn't line up with the start of the fade, I get this little checkered border since the second video hasn't started yet. So two things you could try. You could shrink the fade a little bit, or you could just extend the start of that second video out. So you want the second video and the start of the fade to line up and match. So now I'm going to take this second layer, so this second duplicated layer, and I'm going to drag this over, so the end of it I'm just cropping a bit until it lines up with the end of the video. So this end is actually the start of the video, so it should loop nicely if we go to the beginning here and hit the space bar for it to play and loop through. So as it's looping here, you'll see the fade, so the smoke is actually fading, so it looks a lot more seamless than what we started with, so you have a lot more of that flow and fade within the image, which works really well. Now if you decide that you want to go back and maybe touch up areas of your video, so maybe getting rid of these water droplets, or over here getting rid of some of the scratches, you can do that. Or if you wanted to make your image so that it's just part of your photo moving, so just part of this video moving up here where the steam is moving and this stream of water, you can do that as well. So you're going to do that the same exact way. But in your layers panel, you're going to choose your video group 1 copy and just duplicate that again. So now you have 3 layers. So you have layer 1, layer 2, and then this little layer at the bottom here that we created. Now with my top layer, what I'm going to do is slide this little tab over until I find a part of my image that I'm happy with. So for the most part, most of it's the same, but I'm going to find an area where the stream is pretty steady, so maybe somewhere towards the middle of the photo. And then on my picture layer, or in my layers panel, I'm going to click with 2 fingers on my image and go to rasterize layer. Now what the rasterize image does is makes this top layer a picture layer. So as I slide this bar over, the picture stays exactly the same the whole way until I get towards the end where this little sliding bar is. And this is going to create a little bit of movement, so you can see that water starting to move, the steam starting to move. So we need to get rid of this little bar here, the fade. So I'm going to click on it, hit the little trash bin, and now you have that top picture layer going the entire span of the video. So now if I hit my space bar for the video to play, it stays in the same exact spot. And we want the picture to stay in the same spot except for where the stream and the smoke are. So to do that, we're going to click back on that image that we rasterized. I'm going to pause this timeline. So I'm clicking back on this video. And I'm going to add a mask to it. So this is the picture layer on the top that I'm adding a mask to. And at this point you should know what to do with the mask, but you are going to set your paintbrush to black. And then I'm going to change the size of my brush so it's a little bit easier to erase areas out. And I'm going to select a different paintbrush here. So with your brush, again, change that color to black if it's not set to default already. And then I'm just going to mask out the part of the picture that I want to continue moving. So that's going to be up in the corner here where all that steam is, and then where that water stream is. So the rest of my image is going to be just the photo. So if I go to play that, you'll start to see the water moving, and it still needs to load, so it's a little bit slow here. You can see the water moving and the steam moving. One thing to look out for when you go to play back the video is to make sure that there's not a section that gets cut off. So if there is, I would go back with this, with your top layer and your paintbrush, and just try to bring back maybe more of that area that needs edited and adjusted. So from there, now that you have this top picture layer, you can go back and make adjustments to just this picture. So now I can use maybe my clone stamp tool, make that a little bit smaller here, and select the area of the picture that I want to copy, so I can maybe get rid of some of those smaller water droplets and really fine tune the image at this point now that you have just the picture in this area. So at that point, when you're finished editing, make sure that you do save your video so you can go back and have all those edits there. But that should be enough to get you started editing this sort of image where you have that loop and playback.